Right. Yes, that's what I like to hear, recording in progress. Welcome everyone as you're coming into the room. It was nice to see so many people extremely prompt and waiting for this webinar to start this evening, this morning, this afternoon, whatever time zone you may be on, whenever you may be watching this. So we'll just give everyone a moment to get into the Zoom room, and then I'll start with some introductions. So, all right. I know more people will be streaming in, so look at those little numbers tick up. I'm imagining you all in a room together. So very glad to have you here with us this evening, or again, whatever time zone you're in. So I'm Katie Freeman, and on behalf of Mystery Writers of America, welcome to MWA University 2025 in the new year. If you didn't get a chance to catch the excellent webinars from this past fall, you can find them on MWA's website and YouTube channel, as well as how to join as a member if you aren't already. I hope all of you are. I also wanted to highlight all the nominees and the special award attendees, not attendees, sorry, honorees for the 79th Annual Edgar Awards, which will take place on May 1st in New York City. And now on to today's presentation with AuthorBytes, your online brand done right. Steve and Ken from AuthorBytes will share key insights and best practices regarding the elements of an effective website and how to incorporate them into their web presence, into your web presence. They've completed over 900 projects, so I think they have a lot of expertise to share with us this evening. I'm going to introduce them both really quickly, then you'll see me disappear, and then Ken and Steve, you'll take it away. So in a prior life, Steve Bennett was a full-time author with more than 50 solo, collaborative, and ghosted nonfiction business works to his name. He also co-authored a parenting activities book with his wife, which sold over 1 million copies. After a stint as a tech journalist and a media trainer, he founded AuthorBytes. Now in its 24th year, AuthorBytes' hundreds of clients include New York Times bestselling authors, rising mid-list authors, and debut traditional and indie published authors. Steve's current role is business partner development and creative design director. And Ken Wiesner is the tech side of AuthorBytes. He might even be part human, part digital. He lives and breathes bits and bytes. An expert in internet security for the past 30 plus years, he's been involved in numerous web-based ventures. As CTO of AuthorBytes, Ken is responsible for maintaining and enhancing the network he's built for hosting all of the company's client sites. He also ensures that all development efforts comply with best practices for security, SEO, speed, mobile-friendly design, and adherence to data collection regulations, which I know literally nothing about. So I am also excited to hear about all of these elements. And I see everyone active in the chat as well. Just a reminder, throughout the evening, you can share your Q&A in the Q&A box. Or if you put it in the chat, I'll probably find it. And we'll turn to those in about half an hour. So Ken and Steve, all you.
Great. Thank you very much. So, as Katie mentioned, I used to be a full-time author long time ago. Ken often jokes that, my tablet then was actually a piece of stone that I'd carve things into, and that might be true. However, some things have not changed, and that is the need for authors to build a brand and to rise above the noise. And that's what we're really here about. There are too many books, too few eyeballs, and even fewer wallets out there. So every author is competing for that little share that can be their own. And the website is a critical element for doing that. So with that in mind, let's start our presentation here. Okay, so first and foremost, why you need an effective website. And the key word here is effective. Look, anybody can toss anything out there with a picture of their book, a little bit of copy, and their picture, a little bit of praise, and call it a website. Is it a website? Sure. Is it an effective website? Probably not. Okay. An effective website is one that connects you with people. It provides credibility. It's the first place that readers and media are going to search for you. And it's that one chance to make a first impression. You don't get another chance. Most important, it's an opportunity to articulate your brand, excite readers, and give them a reason to come back, okay? We don't want people coming to your site, rocketing off, and never coming back. And there are ways to make a site sticky, and that's what we're going to talk about. Before we get into that, Ken's going to talk a little bit about three basic components of a website. And uh, apologies if this is stuff that you already know, but we found that it's helpful to at least review it here. Ken.
So there's basically three main components when we're looking at this, from a huge blown up view here. You have a domain name, and that domain name is going to identify your brand. That domain name will then point to your website that is all the graphics, the content, the text, all the links, and that website has to be available 24/7 for people to be able to consume. And that's where the web hosting comes involved. So we happen to work with all three of these and provide or provide our clients assistance with this. You can also bring your own domain and use that with pretty much any service provider out there. Uh, as far as websites go, we're going to talk a little bit tonight about WordPress, a content management system, powers a good majority of the web. And lastly, we're going to talk a little bit about web hosting and the importance of being on a real good, strong, powerful host that will be available and reliable for your readers to access, and important features to look for, things like backups and site statistics, value adds that could help with your site, like third-party plugins or enhanced theme components. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in the agency section.
All right, so let's get back to this effective website concept here. What is an effective website? Well, it's one that in 3 to 5 seconds establishes your brand and connects with visitors, okay? 3 to 5 seconds, that's all you got. And that's not a long amount of time. In fact, it's less time than it takes for people to rocket off and say, I'm not interested in this. So an effective website in that 3 to 5 seconds connects you with the readers. And one of the things that's so important is in that time that they're scanning down there, that they're getting the whole thing. Who are you? What's new? What are the highlights that you want to talk about? And then drill down deeper into the content. One mistake that people make is they have these massive home pages with all kinds of stuff that people don't want to read. They're not going to read it, okay? That home page should be a quick scan, almost like a magazine. You pick up a magazine and it's got a masthead. A masthead. What's the magazine? In this case, the masthead is who is it? Then there's a cover story. The cover story is what's new. It's your latest book. Or if you don't have a latest book, it's you want to remind people of your last 2 or 3 books, okay? Beneath that, we have featurettes that drill down deeper into the site. We're going to show you an example in a second here, right? So an effective website has a distinct hierarchy of information that gives a quick scan to say, hey, I want to drill deeper into the site. The real measure of the site is not who came to the home page, it's how deep do they go here. An effective website has value-added information that goes beyond, here's me, here's my book, and we'll talk about value adds later on here. Most important, there's a reason to return. A good website, an effective website is going to have new blog posts if you're going to blog, new videos, podcasts, whatever, new whatever, okay? Your Google ranking is going to depend a lot on how much is the site changing? And that's why we like blogs. That's why we like adding all kinds of content on here. So it's not just a static brochure out there in space. Ken, are we going to show an example here of a typical site? Yes, we are. So hang fire. Okay, so this is a site for Maxine Petro, who has written all the Murder Mistress books for James Patterson. And notice that at the top, we had a hero graphic with the book. We have a little bit about Max, okay? We have a quote here from James himself, a little bit about the book here. What else has she done here? Okay, praise for what she's done on her books here. Then in this case, she happens to have her own books and articles. Okay, here's her books. And lastly, okay, we come to the bottom and there's a blog excerpt down there. Actually, it's an essay in this case here. Some people will put their blog excerpt. The point is, when you go top to bottom here, you get a rich display of what Maxine wants you to know here. And each one of those content blocks there, those rows, had a button to learn more, drill down deeper into the site. So the idea that the homepage is in one swoop, just like you'd pick up a magazine at the supermarket, look at the cover, flip it open, you want to drill down deeper. And that is part of what makes for an effective site. So let's talk a little bit about some of the characteristics. I've just told you what are some of the things that ought to be on there, okay? One thing, it's consistent branding. We see too often people who have a header and then completely different branding across the other site, all kinds of graphics that don't make a lot of sense or tie into it. And it's all different from their social media channels too. Keep it consistent. An effective site is one that's going to work on any device. In the old days, it was pinch and zoom. You'd have a website and, oh, on a phone or a tablet, you'd have to pinch down and you'd have to expand to get a menu. That doesn't work anymore, and Google will whack you for that. Responsive design means that your site will automatically detect whatever device it's on and reorganize itself accordingly. And remember, 50% of your traffic or more is going to come from people on mobile. Easy to navigate, okay? Avoid all kinds of wending deep menus that you've got to go down, especially on a phone. That's kiss of death. Make sure that your site loads incredibly fast. And when I say incredibly fast, I mean under a second, because that's critical for your Google ranking, and Ken's going to talk about that. An effective site maximizes book discoverability. What does that mean? It means give the information in a way that Google is going to be reading it. And Ken will talk about that too. Finally, an effective site minimizes your potential for legal nightmares that come from privacy disclosures. Now, you might say, oh, well, I have a site and I've got a contact form. Guess what? You are right there out of compliance with many of the state and international laws there. If you use cookies and you can't build a modern site without cookies, you're right there, same deal. There are more than 40 disclosure documents that need to be on your site right now in order to steer clear of this web of conflicting privacy requirements that are out there. There are ways to do it. We use a service that dynamically updates your site with the latest policies. You can use that. You can use something else. The point is, be aware that this is a problem, and more people are going to get into trouble if they don't address it. A single page privacy policy isn't going to work for you. So an effective site starts with consistent branding, and it ends with keeping you in good stead with various state laws. All right. So let's go back to this concept of the site having a home page, rather a cover story. That cover story in graphic terms is called the hero graphic, and it really should be the hero of the site. Typically, a hero graphic will be about the book, or it might be about the author if you want to brand yourself. It depends what's your goals for the site. But let's assume that it's going to be about your next book. General content, okay, less is more. There's always an opportunity for you to add site as you drill down. Remember, this is a drill down. People will not stay and read long form. So give them enticing snippets that break things down into small chunks. If you've got massive quotes and praise, fantastic. We love it when people get great blurbs and quotes. Okay. You don't have to have the whole thing on the home page. Use ellipses, condense it. You can still have a page with readful quotes. Okay. Use keywords that you want Google to pick you up. And that is things that are important to you that people are going to be searching for. SEO is not about having magic keywords and meta tags. Yes, every site should ship with relevant meta tags and all that, but the real action happens when Google sees content again and again and again that is connected. Finally, and this sounds like a little thing in terms of content guidelines, make sure everything is proofread in final form. I cannot tell you how much, and I'll be crass here, slop comes over the transom that just you wouldn't want that to be your first impression. So proof it, have somebody else to proof it, and make it something that you would be proud of there. Ken, I think we have an example of a hero here. Yes, and this is your own Ellen Crosby, who's out there in the audience now. This is the masthead for her site and a hero graphic. You'll notice that it's her latest book here. And what else might go on here? There should be something that is relevant to the concept of the book. Sometimes we'll take a cover and turn that into a hero graphic. Sometimes we'll use just a blurb, and sometimes we'll use a blurb plus a tagline here that tells you a little bit about what's going on. If you don't have a blurb yet, use a tagline. The point is that right there, this is where it's won or lost. Do I want to go further? What is dodge and burn? Ah, okay, this is an interesting concept here, and it's got a great PW review. So this has done its job here. So the hero graphic, okay, is probably the most critical part of the homepage. And I would encourage all of you to think in terms of how does your book lead to a compelling graphic, either via the cover or something that relates to the cover.
And if I may too, also make sure that you have a good, clear call to action. So in this case, we're encouraging the reader, hey, it's on sale now. This is what we want you to do. Click this button and learn more about the book or buy the book.
So what about the book
Here,
itself? Ken, you want to talk about what ought to be on the site? And Ken's going to show you an example here. All right, we use a particular plugin that standardizes how we present books. And there's a real good reason for it, because if you present the information in the way that Google is going to be indexing the page, then you're helping yourself. Ken, go ahead.
Right. So your reader is not the only audience. The search engines are as well. Many of you, I'm sure, have gone to Google and typed in your own name or one of your colleagues, and you'll notice that there's boxes that pop up that talk about the author or show their work and show the covers. Well, where does Google get that information from? Well, there's a variety of data sources. Sometimes they're correct and sometimes they're not. So let's make it easy for them. Let's give them the correct information. So on your website, this is an opportunity to do that. With this type of a plugin solution, you could display your large book cover, so you can enhance the visual look of the page. But you want to make sure you get all that metadata in there: the title, the ISBN number, the ASIN number, any of the book specs, number of pages, all that sort of thing. And then, of course, all the different places where they can purchase it. You have to be a little bit careful, though. You don't want to have 1,000 different places to purchase. You want to kind of zero that in so that way you don't have information overload for your readers. But certainly you want to have the most common on there: the Amazons, the Barnes and Nobles, certainly Bookshop to highlight independent bookstores. And you don't need to duplicate Kindle and all the other different e-readers. When you click on, if somebody has an e-reader like a Kindle, they're going to know, hey, I get that from Amazon. So you can keep that interface nice and clean. Also, it's not necessary to put in all of the different links to different countries. Amazon's smart. It's going to look and say, oh, hey, you came from the US. We're going to drive you to the US store. Or, hey, you're in Canada. Let's go over to Amazon.ca. And likewise with the other sites as well. You want to have a little bit of an overview, talking about the book itself. This may mirror what you're actually pushing on those bookstore sites. And of course, if you have some great feedback and praise that you want to share, this is a great place to highlight that as well. Want to keep it short. We don't want to overwhelm users. We want to have a nice, clean, concise page that gives them enough information that it entices them to learn more about the book or to purchase the book, and then get them to those purchase links. And another great way to do that is through an excerpt. Amazon has this great little tool, the look inside function. They used to allow you to embed it on these pages. We used to do that a lot with many of our clients. And unfortunately, they took that away, but you can still link to it. And that's a great tool that will allow people to get a little sampling of the book. And there's actual call to action buttons in there so that they can go and purchase it. On the back end of this, the reason we put all that information on there is that we want the search engines to go to this page, and instead of just saying, oh, this is a web page, it's got a bunch of stuff on it and a bunch of text, let's go index it. When Google hits it, we want them to say, or any of the other search engines, we want them to say, oh, this is a web page, it's about a book. This book has buy links and an ISBN. And that's what will help drive that organic search or those organic results to bring traffic to your site and power those meta box tools. So this is one thing that you're going to want to look for if you're doing like a DIY type solution. And we'll talk a little bit more about the differences between working with an agency and using a DIY solution in a bit. But this is something that you want to think about when you're doing that, because not all those DIY solutions are going to support this type of functionality. And here we have a little bit of an example here. This is Leslie Klinger. He's got a nice clean interface here with his buy links, information about when it was published, the ISBN, so that way the search engines can pick that up. Nice little overview and some praise, and then not seen here on this screenshot, but at the bottom there we've got a little excerpt, and that opens up to the Amazon look inside.
Great. All right. One thing I want to stress too is that we've talked about praise in a few places. Praise in your hero graphic, praise on the homepage, and praise on your detailed book page. In nearly a quarter of a century of doing this, God, that is really scary. A quarter of a century. Geez. I can say that one thing is not changed at all, and that is the power of praise to sell. Praise sells more than anything else. That might be obvious, okay? But in fact, you cannot overdo it. So we stress, get your praise out there. All right, let's talk about your bio. So this first point here is really important about talking to, not at the site visitor. A website is your digital doppelganger, the good kind, okay? It's your digital proxy when you're not there, all right? So it needs to do the same thing that you would if you were to meet someone and tell them about yourself, okay? So talk to them, not at. Is this a matter of voice? Well, first person, third person, the right answer is up to you. But make sure that you're talking to, not at your site visitors. Make them feel like they are sitting down and having a chat with you. Some people do bios that have all kinds of photos going back to their childhood, and if you're comfortable with that, that's cool. Or other photos that define who they are. Fantastic, but open up a little bit of your life to them. Finally, photos, okay? I can't tell you how many times we've gone back to clients who've thrown photos over the wall that were, oh, here's an iPhone shot. They look terrible, okay? Which isn't to say that you can't take a great photo with a phone. In fact, the phones are fantastic, but make sure it's a high quality photo and it really shows you and that it's appropriate, okay? If in fact you're a writer of dark, mysterious things, then that picture should somehow reflect that. Doesn't mean that you have to be dressed in a goth fashion or anything like that, but your expression and how you portray yourself should dovetail with your brand. So, all right, so your bio, beyond bio, okay, what else do we have? Well, your site should serve as a way of reaching out to your audience beyond those who are simply coming to see it. Ken, what do you say about that?
Absolutely. So a lot of our clients like to use their web platform to tell their story and add value adds to that story through a blog. It's a great way of not only publishing your thoughts, but getting feedback from your readers as well. You can enable comments on there, and those can be shared out to all the different places through social media and try to build that stickiness and bring people back to that site. Another big player that has popped up, I'm sure everyone's familiar with now, is Substack. Another great platform for putting out that type of blog content. What's the big difference between the two? Well, Substack actually has the ability not only to publish that information, you can monetize it, as many folks have, but it also has the subscription functionality in there, so that your readers can subscribe to many different solutions, and you're part of that same community. We actually work with some tools that make it really easy that if you are using Substack, we can mirror that onto your website without having without taking that Google search result hit for having duplicated content. We could talk about that during Q&A if anyone has any questions about that. A newsletter. Well, we have a lot of authors that are just starting out. We like to call them our authors in waiting. And they'll come to us and say, I don't know, I'm not ready to do a newsletter. That's okay. put up the form on there. It's not going to cost you anything. Grab the data. And it also shows your publisher, hey, this author is actually, trying to recruit an audience and communicate with them and do outreach. Makes them very attractive. When you finally do have that book and you're ready to blast it out there, now you have this mailing list and you have a pre-qualified list of buyers here for your content. And whether you have five 5 subscribers or 500 or 5,000, it's 5 more than if you didn't have the form. So good idea to always put that up there, and do it right away at launch. The other thing that you want to make sure you do is when you're sending out that content, make sure it's something that will engage those recipients of the newsletter. You know, potentially pose questions, ask them to come back to your blog and answer those questions in the comments, or maybe you're doing some kind of a contest. That's a great way to engage with those folks and bring them back into the fold. Kind of talk about the building the subscriber base already here, and from day one, and making sure that through the entire process you're trying to build that list and build that community. How often should you do your reach out? Well, you could do your social media and your blogs, I would say, as often as you feel is necessary. But when you're getting into people's inboxes, try to keep it down to once a month or once a quarter. I'm sure we all have been to places where we've shopped before, and all of a sudden we get inundated with emails. The second we purchase one item, nobody wants to get that in their inbox and be bombarded with it. Try to make sure that when you send something out, have something important to say. Give them a call to action, encouraging them to do something, whether it's buy the book or participate in one of your events. Make sure that you have some sort of a purpose there, and then use the communication tool to reach out to them.
Ken, you want to go back for a second here? I wanted to add a couple things here.
Sure.
So yes, reaching out to a list is critically important, your list, because it's what we call permission marketing. People actually want to hear from you, okay? But that's going to be short-lived unless you give them, as Ken said, engaging content here. We're on the mailing list of all of our hundreds of clients, so we get to see these things. And there are some that come in and we'll go, yeah, okay, that's interesting, all that. The ones that really stand out are ones that we would want to get, even if they weren't a client of ours, because we find what they send entertaining, engaging. We learn something, and it's something that we look forward to receiving. That is incredibly valuable if you can do that. And so give some thought to what you're sending out there. Also, very popular to have pop-ups on a site for signing up for a list. Now, if you do that at the beginning when someone comes, they will not want to see it. They will leave. They might even dislike you and never come back, okay? If you're going to use a pop-up, which is a generic term, then do it on exit intent. That is something that tracks cursor movements, and when the person's about to leave, it's not about privacy, then it will display, hey, before you leave, why don't you sign up for the list? Not only do people not mind it, but it will dramatically increase your sign up. So that's something that we're very big on, and we've developed our own lead capture tool for that. So opening, no. Exiting, yes. All right, Ken, as we move
Actually, one other thing too, if they're reading your blog, for example, and they've gone from the top of the screen down to the bottom of the screen, and they've been there for a little bit, chances are they actually read it. So that's also a great time to have the lead capture tool pop up and say, hey, would you like to get more content that's like this? Click here to subscribe to the mailing list. You could do things like little toasts that pop up in the bottom right corner of the screen, or do a full popover. There's subtle ways of doing it without scaring off your readers.
Okay, so let's talk about value-added content. We've been bandying this term about, so let's actually talk about what does it mean. Now, we see websites as coming in two flavors: brochure sites, where there's good, solid information, and people can learn about you, about the books, and all that. That's great. But then we see a different level with value-added content, which can be FAQs about the subject, image galleries relating to it, resources, websites, videos, podcasts, essays and articles, anything that makes your site sticky, or extras. Here's an example from Lori King, who is quite accomplished at having value adds. This is a page from her site, and it's under fun stuff. She has a video that we put together for her, the Mariorama, and this ties into her books. And then there's all sorts of things on here. There's word games, there's galleries, there's a ton of material to keep you on the site. And that's the key. Keep you on the site. The more sticky your site, the more people are going to literally be stuck to it. The longer that they stay on your site, the more they're going to cruise around and see other parts of it. So doing things like this are fantastic. Is it work? Yes. Okay. Is it worth it? You bet. If you keep it to something simple in terms of some FAQs, maybe it's about a particular crime and there are some things that you've learned from your research, stick them in a value added section. It keeps people on the site. So whatever you can do to keep people on the site, that's fantastic. And it shouldn't be that complicated. If it's related to your work, then you should be able to do that in your sleep. So value add makes your site sticky. So with that, let's head on to best practices for website hosting. You can buy commodity hosting for $2 a month, say I have web hosting, or you can buy hosting for a lot more money, say I have web hosting. What do you need? Well, Ken's going to address that now and why hosting is not just something that you do and it's not a necessary evil.
Thanks, Steve. So one of the big things that we see, especially with our clients, is many of them already have a WordPress site or a DIY site, and a lot of times they are running into technical problems. And so that's one of the things that we try to help them avoid, so that they can focus on their writing and getting their content out there and interacting with their readers and not have to worry about these things. So the best advice that we can give you is when you're going to choose a web hosting provider, if it's a DIY solution, most of those things are going to be part of their software, and we'll talk about DIY versus a agency here in a minute. But if you're working with an agency or you're building your own WordPress site or using another CMS, make sure that you're using a managed service provider. And what is that? A managed service provider is going to take care of all of those technical things on the back end that you don't want to have to worry about. Things like updating the core software, updating plugins, updating theme components. There's always, software iterations. I'm sure everyone here has gotten updates on their own computer. Same thing for a website content management system. Those things need to be updated for security, performance, and all those different things. You also want to make sure that you're going to be on a fast infrastructure. As Steve mentioned, there's a lot of solutions out there. Many of them are inexpensive. And it's that old adage, you get what you pay for. When we start thinking about, taking two different websites and, what is the difference between the two of them, all things being equal, they could look exactly the same. But if you have it on a slow hosting provider and another one on a fast provider, the faster provider is actually going to rank higher because the search engines are not only looking at the content, but they're looking at the time it takes for that content to load and using that as part of their rankings. And not only are they looking at that time now, they're also looking at the size. So for example, if you're on a desktop computer, they're going to be a little bit more forgiving. You're going to have broadband at home. You're going to have a little more juice with your internet connection. We can put some larger graphics out there, video, all that sort of thing. If you're on a mobile device and you're on your cellular carrier, for example, you're going to have, and of course, those are constantly improving, but you are going to have some slower connections there. So Google and the other search engines are going to be looking at those metrics to make sure that they are rewarding the folks that are optimizing for those different environments. And so using a CMS tool like WordPress and optimizing it could take a lot of that pain out of having to deal with those things. Multiple backup options. So if you're using a SaaS or a DIY solution, ideally they should be dealing with those things automatically for you. If you're hosting on your own, make sure that your hosting provider is not only doing daily backups, but that they're keeping monthly snapshots and not just keeping them on the server that your website's hosted on. Because if that hard drive breaks and it blows up, guess what? your backups are gone too. One of the things that we do and many other managed hosting providers will do is not only have it on the server, so that way we can do an instant restore if a client clicks on something and inadvertently blows it up, they call us up, drop a support ticket, we hit a button, okay, it's back to where it was that morning, no big deal. But if something significant happens, and knock on wood, doesn't happen that often, we have copies of that on an offsite storage provider that will be able to pull from, even if that whole data center were to catch on fire. And believe it or not, but data centers do catch on fire. DigitalOcean 2 years ago had a massive fire in New York, and it was a nightmare. Fortunately, they were smart enough to have some pretty good backups and good operations people that were able to bring that back up and running. So just make sure that you're making that investment. If you're going to take the time and money to build a good website, you want to make sure that you're going to have a good quality hosting environment to support that. Web application firewall. So what am I talking about that? A web app firewall is basically a piece of software that's going to sit between your website and the rest of the world and make sure that all the traffic that's coming in gets filtered for as best as it can be for malicious traffic. On any given day, we host, a significant number of websites. We're looking at about 26 to 28,000 on average attacks a day. And by that, I don't mean that's actual groupings of attackers. Beyond that, there's many individual instances across all of our websites. And so we filter that before it even hits WordPress. So we want to try to get that stuff out of there for two reasons. One, we don't want to bog the server down. It's going to slow down your website. We want your readers to go there and have a fast, enhanced experience. If they're sitting around and they're clicking links and it's not loading, guess what? You lost them. They're moving on. They're not gonna wait around for your site to load. So we want to make sure that we're filtering out that bad stuff, let in the good stuff, and make sure they have a positive experience. And because of all the different bots that are out there these days, you got to make sure that there's some malware scanning going on and that your service provider is capable of going through and mitigating those infections. Fortunately, knock on wood, we don't have that problem very often. We have some great software that we subscribe to and some services that help filter that bad stuff out. But we've worked with clients before that have had pretty nice websites, and unfortunately, they didn't have these things in play, and so they've come to us saying, "Hey, can you help us out?" And so we've worked with them, cleaned up their site, and brought it onto our hosting environment. It's funny, we kind of grew a whole separate service offering out of it because clients and other readers would go to their websites and say, "Wow, this is really fast. I want to host there." So we've in the last year we've been opening up our network beyond our web development clients and working with anyone to host their WordPress sites on our network. Status monitoring, making sure that site's up 24/7. We don't want to have an opportunity lost and miss out on reader traffic, especially if it's organic that we didn't have to pay for through the search engines because something went down on the website. So make sure that site is up and running all the time and that you have a tool that's monitoring to make sure that it is working as it should. Another thing that a lot of the web hosting providers will do nowadays, at least the managed ones, the good ones, they'll have a lot of different value adds included with their plans. And what do I mean by that? Well, within the WordPress environment, you can have third-party plugins that provide different functionality, everything from forms to running contests to e-commerce, all these different things. Those typically come with a cost, at least the good ones do. There's some sort of a pro license. And many of the hosting providers out there, will offer you access to those tools as a paid member of their hosting network. AuthorBytes is one of them. We're constantly adding new stuff to our list. But yeah, something to look for. You're not really going to see that on those commodity hosting environments. The last thing I'm going to say about hosting is a lot of these providers out there that are doing the cheap or nearly free hosting, their strategy is pack as many websites as humanly possible onto a server and hope it doesn't blow up. And they're trying to make money in volume. The problem with that is a couple things. One, if one of those websites gets a lot of traffic, and it might be even legitimate traffic, forget about the bot traffic for a minute. Let's say they get on television or they're picked up in a newspaper or magazine or something. or a social media, they've gone viral. If their website is getting hit over and over and over again, guess what's happening to all those server resources? They're not available for your website and your readers because they're getting monopolized by this other one. So make sure that your hosting provider is one geared to make to deal with large traffic spikes, and that they're not overpopulating their servers, creating those nearest neighbor problems or noisy neighbor problems. And if anyone has any specific hosting questions beyond that, we can pick that up in the Q&A. We talked a little bit about the idea of a DIY platform. Well, what do I mean by that? Your Squarespaces, your Wix, your Weebly's, your any host commodity hosting provider is going to have their own site builder. Their costs significantly are usually lower. However, you're not going to get a lot of those bells and whistles that I just talked about with that hosting environment, and you also need to do some pretty hefty lifting when it comes to dealing with SEO and optimizing those pages to be recognized and optimized for the search engines. Another advantage to those DIY platforms is there's typically no software updates to deal with. That's something that the service provider handles. They're usually pretty quick, turnkey to set up, go on, pop in a credit card, and away you go. The biggest problems though with that is when something goes wrong and you're trying to do something and you think you're just that close, but you're stuck. You're on your own a lot of times. Some of them have halfway decent customer support, but it can be a challenge. We'll also find that with a lot of these SaaS tools or DIY tools that are out there, there's a lot less design that is catered or optimized for an author or for an individual book. Whereas if you're working with an agency, they're going to help build you something that's custom. And the last big problem that we see with these DIY solutions is that you're locked into their platform. So if you go in and you sign up with, Acme Company and you put in all this time and content, and now all of a sudden you decide, you know what, I'm really just not feeling it with Acme anymore. I want to move over to a different provider. Well, you're kind of stuck because your content lives in their sandbox now. Whereas if you use something like a WordPress or one of the other open source tools that are out there, it's portable. Pretty much anybody can host a WordPress site. It's literally the most popular hosting management platform on the planet. And when you're working with an agency, those sites are portable. I will say though, if you are bringing your site to an agency and looking to make some changes, depending on whether or not that site has been maintained over the years, that could add to some expense in trying to clean that up. But pros of working with an agency, you're going to get a professionally designed website that's specifically made for your brand and enhancing your brand. And also do a little quick flashback to our outreach section. When you're working with an agency, a lot of times you can say, hey, can you guys also make me a newsletter template or make me a graphic for my Substack that matches my website? So that way we have that consistent brand across all of those different channels, social media too. And there's also, there's all these different specifications now for different image sizes. No one has said, hey, we're going to make a standardization here. That would have been easy. So working with a professional designer can be helpful when you're trying to preserve that brand and deploy that across all those different channels. They know what sizes go where for different platforms. And certainly, working with an agency, ideally they're going to have a full stack that they're working on, everything from the designer tools all the way to the web server stack, and be able to support you every step of the way so that you don't have to worry about those technology issues. Certainly, site content strategy, although we've kind of given you some of that here tonight, but it's helpful to work with an agency because they can kind of help you navigate and decide, hey, is this content here helping me for my goal, or is it not? Does it not really make sense? Some agencies will work with you in writing content, but come on, you guys are all writers. You can write great content. So bring that content to your agency, and they can help you determine where to put it and what makes sense to have up there. And finally, less hassle. If you're working with a professional service provider, uh, you're not dealing with all those technical issues and trying to become a graphics designer or a web professional. That's what you're paying them for. So you don't have to deal with that. Focus on your writing, focus on your outreach, and continue to grow your brand and community. Certainly, that's going to come with a cost, but time is money. So if you find that you don't want to have to deal with a lot of those headaches, it may be very well worth it to work with an agency partner. Certainly, it can take a little bit longer to build those, although I will say, specifically with our clients, I can't really speak to other agencies, but we try to have at least, on the higher side, a 30-day turnaround time. But if you already have a lot of content and you know what you're looking for and have have all the content together, we can turn around a site, significantly faster than that. So certainly want to talk with your agency provider and at least get them to set those expectations. Let's see here. When you're working with an agency provider, ask questions. Don't just assume, oh, well, they're going to handle this. For example, customers will come and say, hey, you're going to handle that Shopify website that I have too, in addition to, that I use for my consulting services when you build my website, right? No, that's outside of scope. That's not our wheelhouse. That's not something we're going to work on. So make sure that when you're working with them, make sure you have a clear defined scope of work and everyone's on the same page. And that's why, you're going to get that clarity on the deliverables in writing through that scope of work. And certainly when you're working with an agency provider, make sure that you get your content or provide them with the content in final form. Don't keep going back and making edits. It's not that you can't do that, but it's going to slow that process down. And in many cases, it's going to cost you more money. So try to have a lot of that content in final form. Graphics, make sure they are high resolution graphics, as Steve mentioned earlier. Don't just send them over email. A lot of your email clients, Google, Apple Mail, Outlook, they're going to help you and make sure that those images are under a certain file size so they transfer properly. So when you're working with your agency provider and you're providing them with those assets, throw them in Dropbox or OneDrive or Google Drive, or one of the many solutions that are out there, or your agency provider might actually have a tool in-house that they use. We have a customer portal where customers can deliver those images to us, and then they will come in the high resolution, highest size possible, so that way our design team can work with those and give you the best results. And with that, we'd like to open the floor to questions. And boy, we only went over about 10 minutes. Well, I should say I went over, Steve. I think we did pretty good here on time, so we can hopefully answer a lot of questions. And I've been getting pop-ups here.
Yeah, so I think that's my cue to pop back on. And Ken, maybe, do you want to stop sharing your screen if possible?
Sure.
I think some people are having a little trouble with some loading, so let's see if that helps. Oh, wait, sorry, I forgot about that part of it. So yeah,
we can come back to that.
Okay, perfect. So we've got a few questions here in the chat, sorry, in the Q&A. Thank you guys for sharing those.
Oh.
And I'm going to compile a couple of them together. And I think you went over a lot of this because a couple of folks were interested in hearing about Wix and Squarespace. And I think that's a lot of what you covered in the DIY versus having an agency. But is there anything else that you would want to share about those two specific DIY possibilities?
Sure. Between the two of them, I'd probably opt for Squarespace over Wix. Their design just looks a little nicer. Also tends to be a little bit better responsive between loading on a desktop and a mobile device. Steve kind of covered this a little bit in the presentation. We have over 12 years of analytics data from Google Analytics that for every site we've ever hosted, and we've seen that number of mobile devices, whether they're tablets or smartphones, skyrocket. So you want to make sure that whatever DIY tool you're using, and even if you're using WordPress.com or another hosting provider that's just giving you a blank WordPress canvas, make sure that it is responsive and that it looks great on all those different devices.
I would just like to say, Yeah. One thing too is that yes, we are an agency and that's our business. You can make a very nice site on Wix and Squarespace. It takes a lot of work, and frankly, a chunk of our business comes from people who have tried and given up. And the issue is, do you want to write and market your books and build your brand, or do you want to play web designer and graphic designer and site content strategist? So it depends on your budget and where you want to allocate your money. But if you don't want to be any of the former that I just mentioned, then an agency is probably a better route. Again, that said, you can, in fact, create a very nice site on a DIY platform.
I'm going to just add a couple of quick, now we've got more questions coming right into the chat. So let me try to get through a lot of these. Just a quick logistical question. If you have a website with Wix and you change, is the domain transferable?
In most cases, yes. Hopefully, you have registered the domain in your name. Um, I will say most of the DIY solutions that are out there today, they're pretty good about that. If you've worked with a freelancer or an agency in the past, make sure that you own your domain. You could use a tool out there called Whois to find out, who it's registered to. Sometimes you're going to see it's got a privacy block or something on it. But just make sure that you own your domain. Even if you're registering it through your service provider, make sure you are the admin contact and that you can take that domain wherever you want to go. But yes, in theory, if you have a Wix solution or you've bought your domain through GoDaddy or something like that, those are portable. You can transfer domains. There's some restrictions may apply if it were prohibited, but yes.
I would say just make sure you keep paying for them at the point at which you need
Yes.
to renew as, yep.
You know what? You're supposed to change your batteries in your smoke detectors once a year. When you're done changing your batteries, make sure that your website contact information is correct with your registrar. We've actually had customers that have not only lost their domains, but fortunately found out during the redemption period. But unfortunately, their registrar says, "Well, I'm sorry, you've missed that 30-day window. So instead of paying $20 for your renewal for a year, yeah, that'll be $400." We've also had people that have scalped or have extorted clients, and we've had to work with them to help them get their domains back. That is not fun. That is very expensive. You don't want to do it. Just make sure your contact details are up to date. Make sure the credit card payments are up to date. And there's also monitoring tools out there that you can subscribe to for cheap or free. Use those and monitor it.
Also, just a question about WordPress. Do we who use WordPress need to worry about the ongoing legal problems? And I'm putting an article in the chat just for those of us who didn't know anything about it. I'm not actually sure that article says what it is, but just a quick response to that.
It's not WordPress. It's
So, yeah, we only have an hour tonight.
I was going to say, or maybe we can say
so
that's not really answerable.
Yeah. So here's what I'm going to say about this. The legal problems that I assume they're referring to are the whole WP Engine, WordPress.org. We'll call it a fiasco. I have personal feelings about it. I'm not going to go into all that right now. What I will say is the community is so large and so vast and so strong that under the GPL licenses and actually I'm sorry, GPL and I think MIT license, somebody could fork it, which means that they could take that open source software and call it Word Copy instead of WordPress, and it's literally the same software. Tastes the same, looks the same. It's literally the same, and it will live on. So the folks that are being the rabble rousers right now, the only thing they're doing right now is they're ticking off a lot of people in the community and making it more difficult for agency owners to support their customers. That being said, I don't see what's happening right now between WP Engine and Matt Mullenweg as something that is going to hinder our authors' ability to utilize WordPress or a fork of that software to effectively build a solid website now or for many years to come.
Ellen, whose site you had used as an example earlier, had mentioned as a longtime client that she's experienced being able to do her own updates on WordPress, which you helped her with. but that you're now offering that as an opportunity for clients. Do you want to, I mean, I think that goes to some of the DIY
Sure.
and the help.
So one of the things that we really try to focus on when we're building a website for an author, and this goes not just for us, but other agencies as well, uh, they're trying to build a tool that is going to be something that you can utilize and update on your own. That doesn't mean you have to. If you don't have the time for it, you don't want to have to do updates. Okay, no problem. That's what our support team is for. You drop a note to them and say, "Hey, I got this thing. Go throw it on the website." We'll either charge you a la carte for it, or you can. We now offer maintenance plans, so that way customers kind of know what they're getting into and can budget for that. Many agencies will offer that, some don't. Some of them are all on the clock and that's it. So that's a good question to ask when you start working with them. But I will say we use a platform called Beaver Builder. It's been around for quite some time. It sits on top of the WordPress stack, and it's a graphical user interface. So you're not going in there and writing a bunch of code. Doesn't mean you couldn't. There's ways of doing that. But for our average user, if you go on there and you say, "Oh, you know what? I want to make a tweak of my bio on the homepage." Okay, no problem. Log in, click on the homepage, click on the bio, and you're going to get a little box so you can edit copy. I will say, if you can navigate Microsoft Word or an email client, you can navigate WordPress and Beaver Builder. It's not that complicated. We typically will do 45-minute trainings with our clients when we launch the site and walk them through those things. Many of them remember, most of them forget. And so, another good thing to ask your agency provider is what sort of training resources do they have available. We're actually working on some video training right now that will be available to all of our clients, not only on how to use WordPress, but some other value adds too that I can't talk about right now, but come talk to us this summer and we can disclose some more information about that. But definitely a good question to ask your provider.
We've got a couple of other good questions here. I know we're coming to the end of the hour, but we'll get through these last couple. Nancy was asking, I'd love to hear any tips you have for authors who have been published in magazines but don't have a book out yet. More specifically, shopping a manuscript around and want to show agents, editors, I have an online presence.
Sure. So many of those magazines and those places where you're being published are going to have an online presence. Typically, they will put, you can find more about this person here. That's a great opportunity for them to link to you. If you speak with their editors or whoever's facilitating that, a lot of times they'll help you build those backlinks. Not only is it going to drive traffic from their sources to your website, but guess what? Google's going to see that too. And Google's going to say, wait a second, there's like 7 people that are 7 different websites that are linking to this. And boy, 4 of those websites, those are huge. Let's pop this site up on the rankings a little bit. So even before you have your book out, you can be building those search rankings, and certainly link to those places as well. Share and share alike. Make sure that if somebody comes in off of one article, oh look, there's other articles too. I can jump to those. And when you link to them, open them in a new tab, because when they're done reading and they close that tab, we want them to land back on your website, not be lost in the ether and say, oh, where the heck did I go? Where did I go? So great question.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just, as a book publicist and as someone who works in publishing, it's fantastic when authors who have had, just a piece out or whatever it might be, when I can go and show them, find them, etc. online. It's really wonderful at whatever stage in the process you are.
Also, quick note on that too. Many of our authors will have a media page on their website. Make it easy for the for the publicists and the PR people. Put your headshot on there in high resolution so that they can download that and print it in their magazine or newsletter or put it on the website. Have those links of those published places that they can refer to. Have that press kit on there. And the press kit could be as easy as a 1-page PDF document if you want. But definitely, utilize the website to help distribute that and make it easy.
Yes. I'm plotting over here for that particular point. We had a couple of questions. What are the privacy ramifications of having a contact sheet for newsletter data?
So again, it was only an hour conversation, but to kind of enhance what Steve was saying, there are all sorts of privacy laws, not only in the US, but in the EU, the UK, Australia, Canada, all these different places. They all have their own thoughts and opinions on these. And so you want to make sure that when you're collecting PII or personally identifiable information, you're disclosing that to the people that are coming to your website. And that PII can consist of contact forms, it can consist of analytics tracking, all sorts of different things. So you want to make sure that your privacy policy is clearly stated on the site and that it's telling the users what you're doing with that. Is everyone going to read it? Absolutely not. Are the trolls, like I'm sure people are familiar with the patent trolls? Guess what? There's privacy trolls now. They go out, they look for sites that don't have it. And if they see, oh, hey, they don't have it, and oh, they look like they might be popular. Yeah, let's go do a small claims court thing for $500 and see if we can shake the tree and see what comes loose. These services are great. We work with a company called Termageddon. Their CEO and I are actually good friends, and we've worked together to build a great solution for authors. It's pretty simple. You fill out a bunch of questionnaires, and it asks you things about what you're doing with your author business, what you're collecting, what you're using that data for, and then they have lawyers that automatically mail merge that and put it into a set of documents that go on the website. And what's great is with those type of services, and it's not just Termageddon, there's others out there too. Some are better than others, but there are others out there. But what's great about them is that when another state comes along and says, oh, hey, we have an idea on how to deal with privacy policies, these providers can look at the questions you've already answered and say, hey, can we just update the policy based on those questions and be compliant? If yes, do it. If not, contact the client and say, hey, do you do X, Y, and Z on your site? Yes, great, we'll update it. No, okay, great, we'll update it for that. So don't just go out and say, search privacy policy and copy and paste something and think you're covered. You're not. And the trolls will definitely know that. And let's not forget, it's a nice thing to do. Not everyone wants their email and phone number and everything else that's collected online sold and distributed and used for marketing purposes. So give them that option.
I think we'll end with this and then just close out with a couple of things. I've put the AuthorBytes website back in the chat just so everyone can open that up if you don't have it open already. Also, more for mystery writers and a reminder about the Edgar Awards on May 1st. So those links are right there for you. Karen had asked, how often do you recommend a site be updated or blogs be posted? Is there an optimal schedule?
As far as, updated. From the software technical side, I'll answer that question. I'll let Steve talk about the content. As often as possible. When there are software updates, you want to make sure that those are getting pushed out. And if you're managing the site yourself, make sure you back up your site so that if you push that update and the thing blows up, you can roll back to a previous version. But I think she was probably talking more about the content side. Steve, I'm going to let you take that question.
Sure. Well, your blogs, 2-3 times a month is optimal. If you blog every day, it's probably going to be a waste. No one wants to hear from you every day. 2-3 times a month is fine. And some people do a mix of a couple short form and then a long form. As praise rolls in, get it up there as fast as you can there. So it's less about, gee, it's the 30th of the month, I should be doing X, Y, and Z. It's, hey, I've got X number of additions to the site, praise, news, and events. As soon as you have new events coming in, get them up there on the site there. So just stay current.
Thank you so much for that. And I thought we'd end with this question. Although I just have to say, when you guys were talking about the trolls and the bad bots and the cookies and the hierographic and the featurettes, I had this entire fairy tale movie playing in my mind. So you've done such a beautiful job of showing us all the different aspects to be thinking about and the work that you all do. So thank you. We'd had a question about your rates, which are always contextual. So depending on, you offer a lot of different kinds of services, which again, you can see on the website, but you want to talk a little bit about, I think you had a code maybe you wanted to share, and also just what people can do for next steps.
Sure. How about if I address the hosting, and then Steve, I'll let you address the development side of things. So if you already have a WordPress site and you're real happy with it, and you just want to get some better hosting to get better security, better backups, better everything. We offer migration services to move that over to our network. We'll do a nice clean up, make sure everything is running tip-top shape, and then add that to our management system so that going forward they get all those updates automatically. And so we have various levels of hosting. The three big ones are we have a basic plan, kind of a pro plan, and then a custom enterprise plan. So if you're a New York Times bestseller, you got a lot of content, you're probably in that enterprise group. If you're just starting out, you're an author in waiting, you're probably in that basic group. Our basic rates start at $19.95 a month. Our pro rates are starting at $39.95 a month, and if you are signing up as an MWA member, we have some substantial discounts for you on those annual plans. So we would want to have a conversation with you. We don't just say, oh, here, go sign up with your credit card and we'll figure it out. We do like to have a conversation so we can take a look at the website, make sure that it has been updated. It's running current versions of PHP, all those different things. Some of you may or may not know what that is, but basically making sure it's going to be compatible with an updated server stack. And then Steve, you want to talk about the site creation?
So every site project has three components. Ken just addressed the third one, hosting. So design and development, which takes us from, hey, let's do a deal to, hey, let's launch this. That basic starting price is $32.50. There's a 20% MWA discount, which takes it down to 27 something. Does that apply to everybody? Well, the discount does. If you've got 50 books, then that starting point, and we do have clients who have 50 books, that's going to be higher. If you have special functionality that you want, and most of you probably don't, that'll add cost onto it as well. But that $32.50 less 20% is a pretty good starting point, and that covers a lot of ground. When you are ready to launch your site, then there's an onboarding fee, and normally that's $3.95. We discount that to $2.95 for MWA members. That's a one-time fee to put you in a walled garden. Then your hosting starts. So that gives you a sense of what we do. We also include our lead capture software with all sites. Normally that's $350, and we include that for free. That's the thing that tracks your cursor movement, the person's cursor movements, and then gives the pop-up, hey, before you leave, sign up for the newsletter. So there are other goodies as well, all discounted at 20%, but that gives you an idea of starting price.
Do we want to mention the Express sites at all?
If in fact all you need is a simple one-page site that can be converted into a multi-page site, we have an option for that. And these are particularly good for authors in waiting. Ken's used that expression a few times, and that is you're shopping a manuscript, or you have one book and you're not sure where you want to go. So typically those are $1,400. We have a special for MWA people, and that's $9.95, includes that one pager plus everything you need for hosting, actually includes your hosting. So basically $9.95 gets you into the game. When you're ready to convert to a multi-page site, then there's a conversion fee starting at $1,500, and we build out the rest of the site.
It's a great way to get started, especially if you're on a budget. And one thing I will mention too is we have some clients that are actually going the other way too, where they've been with us for years, and now they're starting to get to that age where they're kind of done writing, but they still want to have a presence out there. So it's a great way to have a site up there to keep your brand alive and make sure that people are still able to access your most critical information about your work.
Well, Ken and Steve, thank you so much. I hope everyone, if you're not a member of MWA yet, I've put back in the chat yet again, and my cursor is going to head on over to the end button, so we're all going to disappear. I have no pop-up to share, but I hope you check out all the sites that were shared this evening. And thank you again, Ken and Steve, for your insights.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. And we hope if any of your members would like to participate too, we're going to start doing a office hours through AuthorBytes. So if you need to get your question answered tonight, take a look at our website. We'll be talking about that soon, and we can answer more of your questions.
Excellent. All right. Thank you all. Have a good evening, afternoon, wherever you might be.